Even down in the Antarctic there was a broken down motor sledge which he repaired, and that still wasn't powerful enough. But he got interested in what we call rallies and were trials, and with an Austin 7, and he became friendly with the Austin people, and all went pretty well until he and my mother saw a rather hideous accident, and she put the wheel thing on him and said, "No, that's it, no more driving." And so he came back and joined the Aero Club at Essendon, and used to hire bush moths and cirrus moths and gypsy moths and things. And my brother and I used to ride in the front cockpit, no straps, no anything, just wedged in there.
That was GNU, was it VHGNU, or was it a new?
Yeah. Oh, that was what got interested. That was at the motor race.
Yeah.
It was giving I think 3 people at a time rides in a little cabin they'd made inside it, and that got him interested in flying again. It got us interested in flying with him. We used to go to Essendon and fly around, and then the next weekend we'd go to the Melbourne Hunt Kennels and ride ponies.
And then you went down to a certain island down south, and you saw a very important race back about when you were about 7.
Yeah, it was 8. The first Australian Grand Prix down there, and it was absolutely fascinating. And when you think of it now, I mean, we walked round the circuit during the race, round on the edge of the thing. You know, look out, here comes one. You know, and right round to the pits and everything else. And clouds of dust. Like all handicaps, of course, a small car won, because whoever worked the handicaps out forgot that the unfortunate people with the fast cars at the back had to pass every one of them probably 3 or 4 times to make up for the handicap. And of course the people out front didn't make that very easy. And a cloud of dust and everything else. So most of the races were usually run by some of the cars that were out front to start with. Well, as they are now, let's face it. Yeah.
Well, your interest was whetted in flying and in motor cars, and now we go back to 1939, September the 3rd, and you decided to take a big step.
I'm just trying to think. I can't think of the actual date, but we had a group of people coming round trying to get people to join the services, and the Army and the Navy and the Air Force, and 3 groups, and I don't know what the others were, but I mean we were quizzed quite a bit, fitness and that sort of thing, and I was reckoned to be suitable for pilot training, and was sent away. And of course the snag was you then had no university stuff to do, and you were told to hang on, and it'll be a while before we can train you, because we were completely overloaded with the volunteer people who all hadn't passed out. And so we carried, anything a car would carry. We carried a lot of evacuee children and things like that out to the country, and filled in time that way, and until one day they said, "Okay, we'll take you now." But
so what happened when you went training? What was did you have to fly on Tiger Moths first, or did you go onto the Miles Magisters or whatever? And for you at 6 feet 4.5 or 6 feet 5, how the heck could you get into a Spitfire?
Just. Yes, it's funny about that, because I was signing things. This is jumping to now. with a German fighter pilot. And we were talking about the war, and I said, well, I was always sorry I never flew a 109. I had a couple of 190s, but I'd love to have flown one. He said, no, you wouldn't. You wouldn't have been able to get in.
How big was he?
Well, he'd done everything. He'd shot down 300 or something, but they're mostly Russians.
All right, your training. What did your training consist of, and how many hours did you get before you were set off on?
Oh, it was all very peacetime to start with. I mean, we were sent to Cambridge to do all the drill, which we'd all done in the school cadets anyway, but having been hanging around all that time, we were a pretty scruffy lot. But eventually we went to Cambridge so to do the drill, which we all knew anyway. And then one day they said, okay, off to initial training. And our little mob were lucky enough to go to Desford, which was Reed and Segrest's peacetime training thing, which meant instead of living in barracks, we had our own rooms and all that sort of thing. And 35 Tiger Moths. And we had very good instructors because it was a peacetime outfit, and they'd been doing it for a long time. And we got 25 hours dual, 25 hours solo, and a bit of instrument flying. That fascinated me. At the end of it, of course, you were assessed, and instrument flying in a Tiger Moth really was sort of stick and string. And at the end, my assessment as a pilot was above average, and my assessment of instrument flying was above average, and I thought, my God, if it was anything like me, and I should hate to think what someone below average was.
Yeah. So, we're flying Tiger Moths, then what do you graduated onto what then?
Well, we've actually, this was the middle of the Battle of Britain going on now, and we found some of our Tiger Moths were fitted up with 8 bomb racks, and when there was no if, it was when the Germans invade, they'll have 20-pound anti-personnel bombs put on each of these things, and you go out and drop them on the German troops. That'd be about it, because I don't know how you'd get away with it, although I think someone would have got away with it, because the difference between a 109 sort of cruising at about 300 miles an hour and a Tiger cruising at about 60, I think that he'd be gone and he wouldn't get a long shot at him.
Right. Yeah, so you got off the Moths into what?
We went the big jump. We went from there to Sealand, which was an old Air Force station from the First War, and up near Chester, and flew Masters. Well, that's a jump from 130 horsepower to 750 horsepower.
And why a Miles Master? Why did they choose that?
Yeah, well, because it had all the modern bits. It had constant speed air screw, retractable undercarriage flaps, everything.
Everything that the Spitfire had except the Merlin, almost.
Yeah, but it had a Kestrel, which was exactly the same layout, and you got used to flying with a bloody great long engine in front of you, and not seeing very much where you were going until you got the tail up. But it was a very good sort of thing to jump to, because unlike a Harvard, which of course was a radial engine, you did get used to having a big engine in front of you.
So when you got onto that, then what's the next move was to be posted, was it?
Well,
operations?
Well, then you just sat there, and rather like anything else that you tested, and they decided whether you were going to be a bomber pilot or a fighter pilot. They'd already put you down as probably a fighter pilot, but yeah, there was a final test then. Some people went back, but not many. And where you were going to go, and you either went to a Spitfire operational training unit or to a Hurricane operational training unit. Funnily enough, most of those wanted to go on Hurricanes. We thought they'd been given a hard job in the Battle of Britain. The Spits had the easy job. But I went to Spits, and I found out when I came to fly Hurricane, I was bloody glad. Hurricane was very slow compared with the Spitfire.
Right. Could you give us your impressions the first time you got into a Spitfire and you were off on your own, flying solo in a Spit? What was it like?
Thank God, I've done it, you know.
Yeah.
An
easy aircraft to fly?
Absolutely dead easy. No vices. In fact, I mean, this is the truth, but when I became a flight commander, I could do what I liked to a certain extent. And early morning air tests or thing, you've got the airfield to yourself, so you can do something that's not supposed to. And I used to take off not touching the stick. And just open the throttle, trim it out, open the throttle, and the thing would take off and fly and climb away by itself. It was that stable, and it was that foolproof.
Well, now, once you got that, you were posted to, and I believe, did you not ask to be posted to a certain area?
We asked to be posted, my brother and I, because my brother had come and joined me, but to Tangmere, and because that's where my mother had met my father in the First War, and my grandfather, of course, was still living in Chichester, and the uncle whose car I used for Brooklands was there as well. And lo and behold, we got that, which is the only time. Normally, if you ask for something in the services, you get the opposite. But,
that happened to be 610 Squadron, was it not?
Yep.
And that was a squadron was commanded by a pretty famous bloke down the track.
No, the wing was.
The wing, I beg your pardon.
Yes. No, they were all ex-Battle of Britain people, the COs and flight commanders. And we were 610, 616 and 145, the two squadrons at Westhampnett. The squadrons would move from Tangmere except for the night fighters because it had concrete runways and it was always being bombed because in the dark, you know, the white concrete runway straight up. So Tangmere was pretty well bombed. So they shifted everybody to grass airfields. We all had quite, you know, all sort of highly effective type permanent Air Force COs.
One was a fellow called, his name was Douglas, was it not?
Oh, well, he arrived. I mean, Douglas Boulder was a wing leader. I mean, he didn't command a squadron there. He just commanded a squadron during the Battle of Britain. And he was one of the first wing commander flying. Up till then, the wing was led by the senior squadron commander of the three squadrons in the wing. And they decided, the top brass decided to have permanent wing commanders, and he was one of the first. And he chose Tangmere and came down, and after terrifying us when he first arrived, he did all the things that we'd have got court-martial for, and he'd lost his legs showing off doing low-flying aerobatics. And but if we did low-flying aerobatics, we were in trouble.
What sort of a bloke was he, apart from a pilot, which I believe he was a bit rough at times, was he not?
He was. Well, the thing is, of course, he'd been discharged after he lost his legs and worked for Shell, and he'd bullied them into having him back, and he did well at Duxford. And anyway, he was one of the original wing commander flying, and he flew with 616 Squadron on the other side of Westhampnett, where St Mary's Corner is now. And very seldom flew with anyone else, which was a big mistake because it was tough luck on the commanding officer of 616 because he never got to fly to lead his own squadron because he'd got the wing commander leading it. But he was a very hopeless with the ground crews. I mean, they hated him. He was very arrogant, very tough with them. And one of them wrote a thing when he was shot down saying, "Peace at last descends on Westhampnett. Wing Commander Barter has been shot down." But amongst the pilots, once we got him in the air, he was a brilliant leader. And so to us, he was very important indeed. And when he did go missing, you know, nobody knew what the hell had happened to him, and we really didn't think he would get shot down, but he was.
Tell us, from your own point of view, your first experience, the first time you had to go into action. What thoughts went through your mind?
At last.
Right.
You know, you've gone through all this ruddy training and everything else, and at last I'm doing what I'm being trained to do.
Do you remember that day?
I remember that day very well, yes. Because my commander took me up to say, well, you know, you're now good enough to be operational. Come up with me, we'll do the first trip today. This wasn't a big wings show or anything, this was just chasing one German raider, and we clambered up to 25,000 feet or so, and the controller called up and said, "Okay, you've chased him away, you know, return." And so we did. Pancake, they said. They thought they'd fool the Germans, I don't know why. If we said land, they'd know we were landing, but if we said pancake, they wouldn't realise when everyone said. But anyway, we trainers going down from 25 grand, I mean, we'd go down like that. He just went straight to see if I'd follow, and I followed. I was waiting for the wings to come off, but I thought, well, I've got to follow him because it's what he's trying me out with. And we pulled out and came back hopping over the hedges, you know. And he said, "Okay, you'll do." And from then on, I flew with him for quite a few trips, and then they had a changeover of all the commanders in the Tangmere wing, and Douglas Barter brought in all his friends and made them flight commanders and squadron commanders. And I flew a lot with our 6th NCO, and which I suppose was good because you weren't always just chasing somebody else. You were keeping with all you had to do was keep with your leader. You didn't have to see what was going on around. You had probably a month of that, and then you were moved up to lead one other fellow, and you know, when they reckoned you were safe enough to do it, and you gradually moved up until you became a flight commander, and you got 6 people to lead around.
I can remember a book called Wing Leader, Johnny, a friend of yours, Johnny Johnson.
Johnny and I were together, right? Yeah.
And he wrote in that, towards the start of it, he was talking about an action that you were in, and it might have been the first time you got a couple, and he said Ken Holden was... It was
Marcia, yes.
That's right. He was jumped by a couple of Messerschmitts,
yes.
And, quote, "the young Australian Tony Gaze smacked them down," were his words. Do you remember that?
Yeah. I nearly got myself shot down too. Yes, they were coming down. They bounced us really. They came out of the sun, and we didn't see them until they were very close. And this one was having a go at Ken, and I managed to sort of push it off and hit it. and it rolled over and started down, and I was going to follow it and have another shot at it, and I hit it slipstream, and it flicked me right round, and as it did, the other German shot past me, and if I hadn't hit the slipstream, he'd have shot me down, but then I was behind him, so I let the first one go, and got the second one. And so it was all a bit of fate. And the first one, I didn't know what the heck had happened to that. So when we landed, you go and make your report. And I said, well, I got one because it blew up. But the other one I hit, I don't know what happened with that, so I better claim a damage. And a couple of blokes who were behind me on the queue making their reports said, are you the bloke who did a roll? And I said, yeah. And they said, well, that one went straight in. So I got, I got two, yeah.
Were they the first two, or had you gotten any before that?
No, I chased a few, and I'd hit a few, but not enough to claim. See, you had a choice of claiming. If you fired your guns and you didn't see anything exciting, you just told the intelligence officer, because they knew you'd fired the guns because he blew the patches off, and he'd say nothing to claim, and that was it. But if you were pretty sure